of options, and now I've made claims to my insurance company twice, and things will unfortunately get worse as the weather continues to change. And I'm not exactly sure what can be accomplished here, except that somehow there has to be a way to either dredge the river a tiny bit and clean up the part that is so overwhelmingly clogged, or make some agreement with regional water authorities so that there's got to be some way to widen that bridge or to move it to another location. I know these are expensive options, but I'm hoping that you all will suggest to me things that I can do or things that the town can help me accomplish in order to, I mean, I really don't want to mess with Mother Nature, but I know that sometimes you have to. I understand that when this house was built, the river was actually much wider, and one of the owners, a couple of owners back, took it upon themselves without getting any kind of permit to dump an enormous amount of soil in order to extend the yard. It's a gorgeous yard, but it really gave the river nowhere to go. So I'd like to have the option of either creating a berm around the edge of the property on the water end, or perhaps, making an exception and dredging out that part of my yard. I don't need that much land. I love the water anyway, but giving me permission to adjust the property so that it works with nature, but it also works for my family. Thank you.
Does the bridge block debris flowing down the river? What is the bridge causing?
It's causing a sort of a clog. It's not that it stops it from flowing under normal circumstances, but when there's a storm or the first spring melt, when the melt is heavy, there's a backup. So I can't remember the measurement, but there's, maybe 50 feet from the water, and the water literally comes right up my yard. I mean, I watch it. I go to sleep at night and cross my fingers and wake up in the morning to, really
So you're saying the water can't get underneath the bridge, or it's higher than the bridge?
It isn't higher than the bridge. It's still low, but it doesn't, instead of going through and filling up the space under the bridge, it just expands.
It's changed its course.
Right, and so all of those trees that are right along the edge of I used to call it a brook, but it's really not. All the trees are starting to cave in because the roots have been exposed. And I don't know that it's okay for me to trim those down either. Hopefully some beaver will come along, build me a new house. But in the meantime, I need to figure out a solution, because at this point, even if I wanted to leave and start fresh, which I don't, I couldn't probably sell this house either.
Well, we can't really suggest anything that you can do on somebody else's property, of course. But,
Right.
Chris, what do you think about maybe having Jim go out there at
Yeah.
some point and just taking a look if there's an option of something that can be done?
Certainly.
Removing some of the soil in your yard to make the river wider might be something we can consider, if that'll help alleviate your concern.
It would.
But I don't know what effect it'll have elsewhere,
Right.
The unintended consequences of something are concerned that, I don't really have I don't know if any of us have the expertise to really deal with. Stephen?
Yes, I'm sorry to hear about your problem. You mentioned that you thought there was debris farther down the stream.
Right, there
and
is.
that interested me insofar as that
Right.
could be creating a bottleneck and causing a backup on your property and at the bridge area. Have you observed the conditions at that
Yes.
debris field, let's call it,
Yes.
during flooding?
What's interesting, as Mr. Kirk asked, the water does not rise underneath the bridge or overflow it. It just jams up where I live, just right before the bridge. and then what flows beyond widens and flattens a great deal. And it is full of stuff, just natural debris. There are, the town's right-of-way on the property between myself and my neighbor that's supposed to be used for the town to get into that property should the need be, or the Regional Water Authority, is completely closed over. You can't really walk very far down it anymore. Nobody maintains it. And so, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I have terrible frustration. And if I could dredge it and or create a berm so that I could prevent the water from coming too close to the house.
That's exactly the point.
Army Corps?
I'm sorry?
Will this involve the Army Corps in terms of the river?
Move over a certain amount.
Yeah. I think if we can get the engineer out there,
Maybe
at least an
if we can
assessment.
At least look and see what his thoughts are. I mean, you can't,
Consulting engineer.
I'm sorry?
He's their consulting engineer.
Okay.
And a number of the things you've described seem to conflict in terms of why the water, so I know we don't know.
Right,
And somebody who is an expert really needs to look at it and decide what might work.
right. I understand. That's true.
I mean, creating a berm on your property will have an effect on somebody else's property,
Right.
and I don't know. So you know, we'll talk to our consulting engineer, ask him to go out there and take a look, and you know, Chris will let you know when he's going out there, so you can explain what happens to him.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And that way, at least we'll give some, you know, give us some insight and give you a little direction. I mean, he wouldn't be able to design what needs to be done, but at least he could tell you what an alternative might be, and then we'll go from there.
And I
I
can
guess.
also try to contact someone from the Regional Water Authority to have them out there at the same time, because if there's debris in the stream,
Yeah.
which is just cleaning out the debris, because the debris is on their property, I believe, it's not
Right.
on Liz's property. So
Right.
if they're not interested in doing anything with the bridge, at least maybe they would assist in removing some of the debris
Yeah,
from
they
the stream.
definitely have more resources than both of us, so anyway.
I mean,
But
I'm
yeah.
not about putting on a set of waders and going out there and I'm pulling it out myself. But I really don't want to. I'm
Yeah.
63 and getting past this point.
Well, we'll leave it at that at this point, and Chris will be in touch with you once we talk to our consulting engineer and let him get in touch with the Regional Water Authority, and then see what happens.
Well, I really appreciate all of you hearing me out. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
all right, thank you. Okay, next, new item on the agenda and the new business is the, Peck Hill Road, request for release of the bond. Mr. Garcia, do you wanna talk about that at all, or should we just refer that to Jim to take a look, or?
Yeah, you can't just. The record, John Paul Garcia. Yeah, this is a 17-year-old subdivision that we're just putting the finishing touches on now. They're selling the lots, and the monuments have been installed, which is not a wetlands issue. But the wetlands, the drainage system has been functioning. I don't think I've ever gotten a complaint on stuff out in Peck Hill Road.
We know, we walked it.
And there's a pretty extensive drainage system in that place, and it seems to be functioning quite well. So the only thing we're asking for is to hold on to $700, I think it was $750.
Yeah, for the,
Just to set one more monument. We have a
an
person with a chicken
encroachment, I
fence.
saw that, yeah. Okay, all right, then we'll have Jim just go out there and inspect it, and.
Yeah, if he
we'll
wants
get
to let
back
me know
us.
when he's gonna go out there, I can arrange to meet him out there, or,
Okay,
you know, good Lord willing.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, let's move on. Next item on the agenda, old business, Northrop Road Development LLC, 54 Northrop Road. It's an application that was continued for the last couple of months, and I think we were just waiting for the bond estimate, which we got. That's the only thing we had outstanding.
And you got revised plans showing where the placement of the markers were gonna go?
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Griffin? Mr. Griffin, who's the owner of the property, is here. Just so you know, I still need a check for the application. Yes. So we can address that. I emailed Ryan back because your engineer called today and I said, no, you know, we've got the stuff. And then I went back and I went, oh no, we still needed the check. I don't know off the top of my head, but, okay.
Okay, so we have the bond estimate, and is this showing where those little triangles are where the signs are going? No, that's not it.
There's one of the sheets that you got has a copy of the,
Oh, yeah, I see, I got it, yeah. Mhm.
you're hitting the mic with the. Oh, okay. Gene was before, okay. It's okay.
So at least we can see them now, rather than try to do this at home. Okay. Anybody else have any other issues or questions on this?
I drive by the site once or twice a day, every day.
Then you'll be our Inspector General. You can report to Chris if you need to. So so do we have a motion to approve the application, usual stipulations, the wetlands signs, the bond amount as recommended, as provided on that list was like 4,800 and change.
Yeah. 4810.
Was there any other issues that needed to be bonded other than the planting? I think that was the only thing.
That was the only thing that had to be bonded.
That's the only thing that needed
Yeah,
to be
and I was
bonded.
thinking 2 growing seasons, $4,810. Any other additions to the approval items? And we have a motion to approve the application with those items.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Jack moved.
Yeah, I'll
Second. Dave
second.
seconded.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Jean, you okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, 5-0. Thank you.
Okay. Give me a call tomorrow and I'll let you know.
Okay.
Thought the cost of the trees was interesting relative to the last cost of trees that we saw.
Yeah, I know. Everything seems to cost the same. Anyway, next item on the agenda, 58 Lawrence Street, Wayne Luciani, first split of lot, residential construction of house. Mr. Garcia.
There were some review comments sent over by the reviewing engineer, which we addressed. You should have copies of that stuff.
We do.
His comments were relatively minor. And in keeping with a question by Mr. Szynski last time, the owner had said he will use nothing but organic fertilizer and will put a fence up, on the edge of the bank to keep people out of the stream. But, that's the only things that were hanging. Jim Preddy had a question regarding soils types, and the USDA soils mapping was, if you look at the USDA soil site, it was 29A. It's all listed as Agawam. And that's all in the review response to Jim. Other than that, I don't think there was anything hanging.
Yeah, I guess the only concern was whether it was a drainage study at all done, and
It wasn't warrant, it's one of those things where if there was a history of flooding, and there is a history of flooding north of Lawrence Street, west of Litchfield Turnpike, and east of Litchfield Turnpike, about 100 yards from where we are, there is a history of flooding. There is no history of flooding Lawrence Street, south and west. And so again, it's not warranted because parole evidence from the owner and even from the townspeople is that there's no history of flooding there. It's a fairly defined channel in between two houses where it goes under Lawrence Street, it goes into a concrete culvert, and where it exits and goes north in between two more houses, it's still a very finely defined channel. And if there were issues, those two people on the south side of Lawrence Street would be the first to know.
so you don't think this development will impact the flooding that's north of the site, or?
Yeah, that's correct. No, I don't think it has. I don't think it's gonna have, in the cosmic scheme of things, it's a very small, it's a, you know, it's a half acre in a watershed that encompasses probably, I would say probably close to 300 or 400 acres, if not more. And it's at the head of the drainage, so you definitely don't want, any kind of, facility that would provide drainage detention, because now what you're doing is you're putting the storage as the drainage is starting to feed. And they tell you it's one of the basic tenets of hydrology and drainage design is lower third of the watershed, get rid of it as fast as you can. Middle third of the watershed, you have to examine it. Upper third of the watershed, you provide as much detention as you can. But those are rough tenets of drainage design. And the reason is because you don't want to store in the lower end of a drainage system and then release it as the other water is coming through and peaking, and all you're gonna do is increase the peak. It actually, in the early days of hydrology, they actually caused a lot of problems. And you'll see a lot of these in areas that are heavily leveed. This woman before was talking about levees. Levees are probably one of the worst things you can do because they not only restrict the channel, they increase the velocities. So, yeah, there's nothing, this thing is not gonna do anything. It's not gonna,
I know the other application you had last month was the first stage of a further development. Is that the plan here too, or is it gonna?
No, this is
continue
just-
farm? Just splitting off.
I was told it's Blake Luce, it's Wayne's son Blake. He wants to put a house there. That's the way it was explained to me. No, the other one is entirely different.
Yeah, no.
And you're getting that one next month.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Well, we need to stay in business, so. I don't know, what's everybody think?
I'm curious about the basement.
Jim made and I agree with him, don't get me wrong. I think this is the wrong site for a basement. However, the owner said what he's gonna do is dig, find the water table, and put the basement a foot above it.
I guess that's the disadvantage of not having to do septics. You would have known that
Yes.
already, so.
Yes, that's correct. It's because there is no septic system here. And while I agree with Mr. Preddy that I think, buyer beware, there's no prohibition against it. It's not gonna do anything to anybody. It's just gonna, if he doesn't do it right,
He'll have to hire everything basement-y.
what's that?
He'll have to hire the basement company to,
If he does it right, there's probably not too much of an issue. But
but I thought it was.
if he pooches it, it's a real problem.
Well, wouldn't a sump pump and then end up going into a drainage ditch?
Yeah, but all you're doing is you're taking groundwater. See,
Yeah, I know, taking it up and putting it
it's a
down.
circle.
Yeah.
You're pumping groundwater from the upper ditch and you're putting it into the lower ditch. And that's why if it's not done right, all you're gonna do is spend a ton of electricity and ton of money
Same
to
water.
pump
recycling.
groundwater.
Yeah. Alright. Well, I guess
Because
we
it's
don't
coming
care.
out of the ditch, into the ground, into his basement.
Right.
That's why I'm not a fan of the basement, but that's, we're not communists.
I have
Anybody
visions of the house.
What's that?
I say I have visions of the basement being very well built, solid concrete, and it acts like a bathtub and it floats.
I spent 3 years trying to fix that problem on a condominium development in Cheshire on the corner of 42 and 10. Every time the swamp came up, everybody's basement came up. So after the 5th unit was built, I told the owner to stop building basements.
That's the right answer.
And it worked. It's a miracle.
Alright, anybody else have any? Steven?
I hate to be picky, but still on this topic of water flows over the lawn. And I think I just would like to say that even the use of organic or natural fertilizers still could result in a nutrient uptake, I suppose, in the downstream of this area. It just contribute to that nutrient load that exists. And so, I don't want to say prohibit the use of fertilizers, but so that's still a concern to me. And just the way the house is configured, it's a little like poking the commission in the eye a little bit at 25 feet from the water course. If you look at it, just the way the house, as I said, is placed on the lot and its configuration. So I just wanted to make those 2 points, if that resonates with anybody else. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other comments?
Well, at this point, the plan is to put one house, but the property really is this entire area, this 58 Lawrence Street?
58 North Street's 11.5 acres. We're only carving out a small piece of it.
Right. So this is still subject to being utilized for residential?
It's a farm. It's an active farm.
Oh, it's a farm, okay.
Yeah, it's an
That's
active,
I've never driven back there, okay.
they actually grow vegetables there. They actually work the property. Right now, I think it's lawn, and they used it for a couple of weddings, but it's an active farm.
Okay. Just curious.
No, it's a first cut. This piece has never been chopped since 1920. Or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And it's all just, I haven't been down there, it's just all a field now, even where that house is going to go?
Yeah, along the edge of the stream is overgrown, but for the most part, it's almost like a lawn.
Yeah.
No rocks, no nothing.
Anybody else with anything?
So you're saying that between the river and where the house is, it's just grassland or?
Yeah, it's just
Just a field.
just grass. Whereas the adjacent two houses, they're literally, there's one house, here's the other house, and here's the channel, literally about 10 or 15 feet from the houses. On both sides, and then on the other side also.
How deep do you expect the water table to be?
Well, the channel's probably around 6 to 8 feet. The bridge, the pipe invert at the bridge is approximately 50 to 60 inches. So I would assume the water table is going to be somewhere around 60 inches. It may be it's maybe more.
Not much of a basement.
Well,
They would end up having to build the house up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you would have the garage at grade,
yeah.
probably have 4 steps up into the house and then 4 steps down to the basement,
I don't
which I
have
still think
anything,
is a bad idea.
I don't have anything else.
yeah, neither do I. Anybody else? It's a small lot, it conforms with zoning, right, Chris? Otherwise you wouldn't ever get this far, so.
Yeah.
All right, may we have a motion to approve the application with the usual stipulations? And he's agreed to put a fence along the back, along
Yeah.
where the stream bed is, okay, or the ditch bed is, so, okay. Any other things we need to add to a proposed approval?
I'm good.
All right, do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to.
Jack moved, you have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Dave seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, you got your lot.
Thank you very much and have a pleasant, safe Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Thank you, you too, John.
Yep, thanks. Yeah.
All right. Organized here. And all right, Mr. Krieger, 8 Specter Road, application for corrective work on pond embankments. Correct. If I recall correctly from last time, we just had to wait basically for our month to pass in order to do the approval. You know, there was riprap proposed and stabilizing the bank and cleaning things up. Does anybody have any other comment, or well, I shouldn't cut you off. Do you have anything else you want to say, or?
No, I just, the commission's been great to work with. Chris has been fabulous, good direction, and you folks have made it easy.
Well, we try not to make it difficult, at least.
No.
So, anyway. Does anybody else have any other comments? We talked about this fairly extensively last month and
Yeah.
just had to wait to get it, so. I don't really see any need for a bond or anything on this, and let's just get it moved, to get it done before you know,
So
as
he
soon
can get
as
his
you wanna do
driveway
it,
done.
so. Pardon me?
Pardon me? Before the
He
next
needs to get
100
his
years
driveway
go.
done, but he has to do this first.
Yeah, well, yeah, and if it's gonna be asphalt, then you better do it quickly too. So do we have a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
Usual stipulations. Josh moved. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Dave seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All set. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good luck.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Moving right along. Any other correspondence we need to deal with, Chris?
No,
Well-
everything decided to come in last minute.
Okay, yeah, and we made it added to the agenda. Enforcement officer report. Chris, do you have anything on that?
I got a call today from David Lord. They have started work over on Wolf Tree, and depending on how the weather hangs out, the contractor seems to feel he may be able to do more of the restoration work in terms of pulling stuff back now in the fall rather than just doing some of it now and then whatever. So David Lord's out there every day that he's there. He's taking lots of pictures. He's going to file a report with us and all that other good stuff.
Great.
So that one's a work in progress. Hurrah. Then we did, Bob and I did meet out today at 47 Pease Road. This is where years ago we had Bob Criscolo, when Bob was still here, do a study for a pipe that goes underneath the road. And there's been an experience of flooding in this area, and we had forwarded that report that Bob had done to the Public Works Department. To date, it still hasn't been done, so I don't know, we don't have any, there's no requirement that we can make, I don't believe, to say anything, but I don't know.
Yeah, I just happened to be driving by when Chris was over at the house. I had looked at it, you know, a week before or so, and what had happened was along the road, the stream bed had actually filled in. There's some trees and things like that in there, so it's causing a backup of flooding. And even if it didn't, if that weren't the problem, the pipe just isn't of sufficient capacity to drain what has to be drained there when it's a peak flow. So we've got to see if we can talk to Public Works about doing what they were supposed to have done a few years ago. So
I did drive up Jeremy Garden, and there are 2 sites that have done clearing next to a pond or to a wetland, so I'm gonna send out a letter and ask that I can meet them, so I can find out what they're doing.
Yeah. Was it fresh work? I
It's
went
fresh.
the other direction.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's definitely fresh.
Okay, all right. So, anything else that,
No,
That's an
other
issue.
than that, it's been pretty quiet, so that's a good thing.
okay, well, that's good then. Last meeting or meeting before that, we had talked generally about penalties and sanctions for violations and that kind of thing. Stephen had put together some information regarding what one possibility is, so he has some papers he wanted to pass out, and you know, what we could discuss it a little bit tonight, but
Thank you.
we probably should think about it for next month, and then there's a
you.
process for amending the regulations if we decide to go forward with it, but it's, you know, useful information that we can take a look at and talk about. I don't know if you wanna talk a little bit about it tonight, and then we will ponder it over the next month, you know. so-
Sure, just briefly, thank you, Bob. So there was concern by at least one commissioner over the last few meetings about conditions out in the field that suggest, that show violations of our wetland regulations, and that some of those regulation violations were either willful or people, the people knew or should have known that they were violations. So I took a look at our wetland regulations under section 14, our enforcement provisions, and I noticed that this commission lacks the ability to impose a civil penalty against violators who willfully or otherwise violate our town's regulations. So I have some experience in this, and I have drafted a proposed motion that contains a proposed amendment to our regulations at section 14.4. You'll see it on page 1 of what I've just handed out, And the new language is what you see italicized as a subsection small c. And it reads, seek a civil penalty for each violation as provided at section 22A 44 of the Connecticut General Statutes. So without that provision, this commission remains powerless, it seems, at least on the face of its regulations, to impose a civil penalty against a willful violator of our regulations. Someone who cuts trees in the regulated area or the upland review area or worse and such. So I thought we could add some teeth to our regulations and authorize us to take affirmative action that might be a deterrent against the next violator. So you see this proposed revision or amendment to section 14.4. Just as background, I've provided you with the language of the statute that's referenced in this proposed amendment, the state statute 22A 44. You could take a look at that. So, if it's agreeable to the commission, I'm going to consider making a motion to this effect at our next regularly scheduled meeting. To whatever extent the commission needs to submit this to council or so to approve it and coordinate our efforts if we choose to move forward on it. So that's all I had to say on the matter. Thank you, Bob.
A question, if we have something like this in there, how would we execute a penalty?
Well,
Send them a bill or something, or have legal?
I don't know, it would be a question that
As
you
soon as
could
you wanna
ask town
charge
council.
money, you need to go to court to do something.
what would happen practically is there would be a wetland enforcement, a cease and desist order, and after a hearing, we would conclude whether or not the conduct elevated itself to willful, and then at a hearing, we could render a decision that imposes a civil penalty. And that could be subject to challenge, of course, like any of the commission's decisions. So I think without this provision, we are behind the times. And if you did your own research, you will find that most other towns in Connecticut do have similar language to what I'm proposing here. So these battles play themselves out in court, and they do not happen often, of course. Most people want to do the right thing, but we should be able to penalize people who don't want to do the right thing, and that not only would help the town recover any costs incurred in enforcement or restoring the area, but as I said, it would be important deterrence, I think, against the next would-be violator.
Yeah, what I think, let's think about it over the next month before our next meeting, and I'll send it over to Jerry Weiner too, just to get his
Yeah,
thoughts on the thing.
Yeah.
how we would enforce it.
Yeah, and I'll check a few other towns' regs just to see, how many have similar provisions already, so. We'd have to go, you'd have to go to court to enforce it, basically, so. I mean, if there's no voluntary compliance, then, that's where everything ends up, so.
That's a simpleton's question. What does the term willfully imply?
Yeah,
That's a judgment call.
yeah, that's
Right.
what you have to determine.
Just like we would be mini judges on the matter, so we would hear the facts and we'd interpret. Knowing the facts of the matter, can we conclude that the violator acted with a willful disregard for our regulations? So, like, for instance, Chris went out and said, "Don't do that," and then they went out and did that. That would be.
Or if we said you have to fix it and they don't fix it, then it rises to the willful level at that point,
Okay,
so.
so it wouldn't apply to say that there was a couple who bought a house, they moved in from out of state.
And
there's-
they didn't know they weren't supposed to cut the trees or push
Well,
the
they were
dirt around.
cleaning it up. I mean,
Yeah.
several people have said that sort of thing. Well, we're gonna make it, more suburban, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's hard to deem the initial act as willful in my mind, but the non-compliance with what the order is typically a willful thing.
I think
The way I
if
think
you're
of it, so.
gonna do that kind of regulation, you need to very carefully within the regulation define willful. Like you say, defying an established.
It's a lot easier to, rather than know what their intent was when they do something.
Right, I
initially,
don't wanna have to figure out what people were thinking.
Right.
Well, I'm just thinking also relative to that is, you know, a homeowner contracts with a contractor to clear some trees in the back of the lot, and there just happens to be within 20 feet of a riverbank.
Or if it's the third time the contractor's done it, you know, it's like,
Right, so I mean, who,
We've had
I mean,
that.
Yeah.
We've had experienced
I mean,
contractors.
legally, the homeowner is responsible.
Both are responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
Both are responsible.
so those are the types of things to think about over the next
Yeah.
month, and we could talk about a little bit more next month, put some more information, so.
We should take this to a sort of even more larger level, just speaking off the top of my head. If I were about to hire a contractor, I rely on things like state licenses or certificates
Mhm.
to show me that they're a reliable electrician or whatever. But the state doesn't have any system for people who might be doing work on landscaping or,
Yeah,
you know, on property.
and that's why you get insurance certificates too.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that's the most important certificate, so. But yeah, no, so it's, you know, thank you very much for bringing this up and doing this
Yeah.
work.
Bob, I just want to add just a colorful note on the fine and such. I've even seen hybrid situations. There's a town out in eastern Connecticut that imposes a $1,000 fine for every violation within the wetlands and water courses, but only a $500 fine against a violator in an upland review area. So people are really getting creative, but bottom line is towns are starting to take seriously their duties to protect these natural resources. So that's why I'm rising about all of this. Thank you, Bob.
Well, we've had a steady, not a steady stream, but we certainly have had
Spate?
a significant number of things that come before us deal with people after the fact,
Yeah.
as opposed to people coming with proposals for new things.
That's not
Just-
new.
No, well, it's, you know, it's been around a couple of years now, and it does seem like we've
Yeah,
dealt
but
with it.
before that too.
Well,
I mean, it's
you
just
can
the
speak for
nature of.
that.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
and it's a continuing problem. I mean,
it is.
Well, this is one way to address it, perhaps, at least to start.
yeah.
Okay. All right, like I
you.
said, we'll continue this discussion next month.
Okay.
No site visits, minutes, July 21, 2021, we have in our package, I think. And,
I have marked up my copy, and I think it's easier because what I found was more formatting, changes, just, you know, getting those darn little indents to look nice and capitalize everything the same way and that sort of thing. So this is your copy.
any substantive things, Jean?
No,
Jean?
I didn't find any, I didn't
Okay,
find
yeah.
any meanings that were controverted.
I saw the formatting things, but I didn't think to tell anybody.
So do we have a motion to approve the minutes subject to Jean's formatting corrections?
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Jack, anybody else?
Second,
Yeah.
Oh, Josh,
somebody, I don't care.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, okay. All set with that? Let me just see what else we have on the agenda here.
That's it?
Unless the town hall shuts down again, Chris and I were talking that I think we'll have our, what used to be annual, like, sort of potluck supper next month before our meeting.
No.
So if anybody's interested and wants to attend, what time do you think, Chris? You know, 6:30?
We usually did
Six? Is it
6.
Okay, so we'll be here starting at 6. You know, if you wanna bring something fine, if you wanna just come and eat, that's fine too. And whenever you show up, it is fine, just if you're bringing something, just coordinate with Chris, and we'll plan on doing that next meeting, 6 o'clock before our meeting.
How nice.
We do that periodically, and if you don't mind, I think we'll invite some of the alumni that, you know,
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
gone off into better things or different
Other
things.
things.
Greener pastures?
Greener pastures,
Yeah.
well, not pastures necessarily, but, because those would be hard to reach, but,
Greener buffer areas.
yeah, exactly. So we'll plan on that for next month, before our meeting. Anything else we need to talk about, Chris?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, anybody have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jean, thank you. Actually,
Jean.
I seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, 8:12, we're done. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great job.
Thank you.